Ah!
Hello everyone, Skippy here, and welcome to One Piece episode 902, an episode brought to us by two of the strongest staff members on the anime, Katsumi Tokoro and Masahiro Kitazaki. We've talked a bit about Kitazaki before in the episode 895 breakdown that you can go back and look at to get more details, but he's mainly a skilled supervisor who's known for his very bold and striking art and ability to produce solid key animation. The staff member we'll instead be focusing on is our director, Katsumi Tokoro. Tokoro's first episode on the anime was episode 50, and his first episode as a regular was episode 161, and he has since proven himself to be one of the best regular episode directors for over a decade, with his episode with Kitazaki back in Dressrosa, episode 719, being a prime example of his skills. Along with his more scattered use of compositing, Tokoro uses scale and clever ways to make the characters feel more ingrained within their environments, which makes for some cool compositions that make the surrounding areas feel as expansive and large as they should, all the while peppering his boards with stylish angles that make it all feel more exciting. This has made Tokoro's episodes feel a lot more grand as a result, with his knack for impactful direction playing a huge role too, always creating an appropriate atmosphere for an episode. So with a solid director who knows how to play with the environment no matter the content, and a supervisor who is one of the most competent on the team, can Tokoro and Kitazaki manage to make this episode just as surprising as last week's, or will it just be enough to get by? Let's find out. This episode covers the last 8 pages of chapter 915 and the first 5 pages of chapter 916, and it doesn't really deviate much from the events of the original chapters. While there is some small filler of Urashima fighting at the sumo ring and Luffy and Zoro fighting sumo wrestlers before Kiku is taken away, the rest of the episode is pretty one-to-one with how it brings the manga to life, and that's more than fine really. Despite the actual events of the plot moving rather slowly, the episode really nails every major story beat in my opinion, and the added filler only helps set the atmosphere, expanding on stuff so it doesn't feel as dense as it did originally. While there is a bit of a weird inconsistency when compared with last week's episode, with the people at the Bakara Town gates suddenly disappearing, I have to say that this episode was pretty well done on the adaptation end. It didn't leave me asking for more from certain scenes despite the slow pace, and it felt like an overall better package compared to last week's episode. Not much else to really discuss here, so let's move on to the next section. Compared to Tokoro's past boards on the series, this one is more middle of the road for him. While there are quite a few shots that of course utilize the environment in fun ways and there's some cool compositing as always, this board wasn't one that I'd really consider top tier. I mean, Tokoro still did manage to play around with what he was given, and that does wonders for when we get more intimate with the sumo wrestling ring, or when Luffy and Zoro are flying the sumos all over the place, but I feel like he wasn't really at full power here. It feels more like he was holding back in places and not going to the lengths that we've seen him go to before, which makes me wonder if this is actually a calculated decision so his next storyboard can be as strong as it can be. Don't get me wrong, this episode does have a lot of pretty cool shots in spite of that, and it is a sound storyboard all things considered, but it settles with being a good storyboard instead of standing as one of Tokoro's best. This episode is really animated all things considered. There's a lot of small but pretty nice animation spread throughout the entire episode, and while most of it comes from our supervisor Masahiro Kitazaki, featuring his simple but stylish effects work, it helps Bakara Town feel more alive. Whether it be as simple as Urashima slapping a fellow sumo wrestler or as fantastical as Kiku chopping off his top knot, Kitazaki makes sure that this episode is as animated as it can be, and that's absolutely appreciated. While his art may be a bit different for some just due to how rugged it looks, it's seriously impressive with how much key animation he does while supervising. The real highlight in terms of animation though comes from none other than Chu Young-seo himself, animating an absolutely insane cut of Luffy and Zoro fighting the sumos. Chu's sense of fluidity and tendency to stick as closely as possible to the storyboard does wonders for this scene, making the blows that Luffy and Zoro deal to these sumo wrestlers feel skillful and hard-hitting, with so much finesse locked in at every moment despite the camera moving all over the place. Hand-to-hand action is something that we don't really see a whole lot in One Piece, so I am very happy that Chu managed to deliver a very solid bit of it here, making me absolutely stoked to see what he has to offer later on in this arc. When mixed together with the usual Ichikawa and Matsuda corrections, we end up getting an episode that isn't absurdly strong, but one that will definitely be staying in your mind. There was a lot that could have gone wrong with this episode, as stretching out manga events certainly isn't easy, but Tokoro and Kitazaki both managed to work with it, properly adapting the original chapters and finding new ways to make those original events feel even more visually interesting. And it looks like Yusuke Suzuki and Shuichi Ito will hopefully be continuing this trend with next week's episode. The board from fellow episode director Yutaka Nakashima looks really damn stylish, and Shuichi Ito and co look to be bringing some nice goodies on the animation side of things, so I'm personally anticipating it to be a pretty fun one. Anyways guys, that's it for now. I'm Skippy, and I personally vote for Ichikawa to be the only person to draw Okiku from here on out.